What was the best thing the quiet kid has said or done in class? When I was in kindergarten, we had a buddy system to help us make friends easily. I've always been an extrovert, so I was paired with the most introverted quiet kid in my class. He barely spoke, but for some reason, I liked him, and we played together often. My father got transferred to a different state that year, so I had to go as well. He was pretty sad when I told him, and when I was leaving, I gave him a Chinese coin that I used to play with. The story till here is what my parents told me. I have almost no memory of this except for the coin. 7 years later, I was in 6th grade, and my dad had just gotten transferred to a different state again. I was short and chubby back then, and I used to get picked on by the class bullies. I expected it to be better when I moved, so I was pretty happy. When I started at my new school, it was basically the same thing all over again. Just different bullies doing the same thing. We had lunch breaks out in the open, and during one such lunch break, I tripped while I was walking and bumped into one of my bullies, making him drop his lunch. You guessed it right. They were not happy. They ganged up on me and started shoving me pretty hard. Thankfully, the break was over, so they stopped and headed back to class. Little did I know, they planned to humiliate me in class. They planned to pour water on my pants as I was entering the classroom and were going to spread the rumor that I had peed my pants. When I was about to enter, though, someone came from inside the classroom and stood between me and the bully and took a splash of water to his side. Turns out, this guy heard them talk about it and decided to act on it. The guy who got splashed was the same quiet guy from earlier. He didn't know who I was, and neither did I at first. I found out later when I saw the coin with him. He had his mom stitch it to his backpack. The world is indeed a small place. Well, look who's back after all these years. It's the quiet kid from kindergarten coming in to save the day and get revenge on those bullies. It's like a superhero origin story, except instead of being bitten by a radioactive spider, he was just given a Chinese coin. I guess it goes to show that sometimes the quiet ones are the most bad. And hey, at least the coin wasn't wasted, right? It ended up being a symbol of friendship and justice. You go, quiet kid. I'm in post 16 in the UK, and in our conference room, there is a Bluetooth speaker that US students are allowed to connect to at break time and lunchtime. Of course, we often fight over this speaker. Regardless of who gets there first, the group of popular kids would just turn it off and then connect to it, which is a massive dick move. Since they are the popular kids, you can't do it to them or you risk your reputation being nuked from orbit. But then, an unseen hero came along in the form of the quiet kid. He didn't have many friends and everyone knew him as just being really smart but not being social. Due to this, he was immune to the popular kids' intimidation and popularity. So whenever they didn't respect the rule of who comes first gets it, he would just turn it off. They would be so pissed, but they couldn't do anything about it. The music the popular kids would put on was the generic rap and terrible pop music. I don't mind those genres, but their taste in artists were f***ing awful, so I was always overjoyed for it to be turned off. My group nicknamed the quiet kid the Terminator based on his titanium testicles to stand up to the popular kids. So, Elliot, if you read this, thank you for your service. Ha! That Elliot sounds like a total bad. Good for him for standing up to those popular kids and giving them a taste of their own medicine. And who cares if they were listening to terrible music? The real crime here is their complete disregard for the rule of who comes first gets it. I hope Elliot continues to assert his dominance and keep those popular kids in check. Maybe he'll even start a revolution and overthrow the entire social hierarchy of the school. Power to the people, or in this case, power to Elliot and his titanium testicles. In a situation similar to a classroom, there was a kid named Billy who had Down syndrome. He was 3 years younger than me, and on Sundays I coached him at the local baseball park as part of a program where travel team players coached and assisted special league kids. One day we were playing a travel game at another park, and Billy and his family came to watch and support us. During a break, Billy was by our dugout saying hello to some guys he knew. A kid from the opposing team, who was from the local area, walked by and said something along the lines of freaking R word. We'd been there the whole weekend, so I didn't know the full backstory, but unfortunately, this type of behavior wasn't unexpected. Since we had the game in hand and there was no pressure, we brought Billy into the dugout to hang out with us after this person showed his true colors. We won handily, and after the game, we typically went to the outfield or another area, and the coach talked to us, win or lose. Billy was invited by the coach. The coach went over the game where we needed to improve and where we excelled. When you win, someone gets the game ball. And in this case, the coach gave it to Billy and everyone cheered as we chased him off the field towards our families. As we exited the dugout, Billy tugged on the coach's sleeve and said he had something to say to the crowd. When I say crowd, baseball and football in the South draw a lot of people at any level, and the story about the insensitive kid had made its way through the stands. Billy held up his game ball and endearingly thanked the coach repeatedly, then, while still holding up his game ball, shouted at the top of his lungs, "Not bad for a freaking R-word!" I don't think I've ever heard people pause and then burst into laughter in such harmony. It was a beautiful moment that still gets talked about years later. It's so touching to see that even in the face of ignorance and insensitivity, there are still people like Billy who can rise above it all with their charm and wit. I mean, who needs sensitivity and tact when you have a game ball and the ability to turn an insult into a compliment? Billy's got it all figured out. I bet that insensitive kid wishes he had a game ball and the ability to make people laugh like Billy does. Smart, nerdy, quiet kid in the front of class, always answered questions correctly when called on. One day, the teacher calls on him and before he even answers, the teacher just lazily says correct and turns back around to write on the board. The second the teacher turns around, the quiet kid just rockets his pencil upward into the ceiling like an arrow. The teacher doesn't notice. It was just such a sudden, unexpected act of rebellion from the quiet kid that never said anything. The whole class saw it, and by the time the teacher turned around, the quiet kid was playing it cool as ice and taking notes again. The teacher doesn't notice. Finally, the teacher turns around again to ask another question, and the entire class is trying not to laugh, and everyone is trying not to look at the pencil stuck into the ceiling. The teacher still doesn't notice. A couple of people laugh, and every time the teacher asked, "What is so funny?" the situation became even more hilarious. Finally, the teacher turns around again and continues the lesson, completely oblivious. It was boring math class, and it was the funniest thing that happened all year. The quiet kid was in my friendship group at school, and even then, I don't think I ever heard him speak. Nice guy still, I think. Despite his total not speaking, there are two things he did that stand out that I remember about him to this day. Firstly, one day, he just straight up fainted in a science class. Doesn't appear to have been anything in said class that would have triggered it. Unfortunately, our labs had those high stools, so it was quite a ways down. The second thing was at a lunchtime. We were at our usual spot by the benches doing whatever we always did, and at some point we realized he's holding a handful of screws and nuts. After a minute, we realized he'd taken all the screws and nuts out of one of the picnic benches, but it was still totally intact. We have zero idea why, but it was outstanding work, especially as we didn't know he was doing it until he did it. Laughing, but realizing we would get our handed to us if anyone found out, we tried to figure out next steps. So of course, some idiot leans on the bench, instantly flattening it in one fluid motion, just as the caretaker walks past. I used to be the quiet kid who didn't say much in class. I was also known as the one girl who was pretty good at drawing. I don't know if this would be considered the best thing I ever did, but I do remember something I am somewhat proud of. For my 11th grade English class, we read through Shakespeare's Macbeth, and the project for that module was a creative project that incorporated the themes of the play. Two of those themes were internal and external hell and torture for some reason. We had to present our projects to the class, so my 11th grade self decided to take all the characters in Macbeth and draw them as tortured spirits, connected to a specific medieval torture method. So Macbeth was drawn with a prisoner's collar, a device that was used to prevent sleep just like he was deprived of in the play. Banquo was drawn with a heretic's fork, a device that was used to prevent a person from talking, just like how Banquo was killed in order to guarantee his silence, etc. I got an A+ on that project, but the presentation of it to the class certainly earned me a few stares. Whoops! My final year of English class in high school, I live in the UK by the way, so I was 16, was super tight-knit. We had running jokes and everyone kind of left everything at the door with regards to cliques and crap. So at the end of the year, the teacher gave out awards and the quiet kid got the award for saying a grand total of 4 words in the whole 2 years we were there. However, a bit of a follow-up from that is that shortly thereafter we dated for a short while, And she was incredibly talkative, which was very, very strange because I'd only talked to her once or twice in the 5 years of secondary school. So Courtney, if you're out there, say more crap because you're pretty cool. Not that anyone asked, but I thought it was funny to add that my award was for saying the most inappropriate thing at the most inconvenient time to the most unsuitable person, which was almost the polar opposite of Courtney's award. I remember going to junior high school in this small hick town in Texas while I was on probation. That's a long story. We had a quiet kid who was actually really popular, not bullied at all like most quiet kids. Anyway, I was new and had only been going to the school for about a month when this happened. We had a substitute teacher for one of our classes. She was doing a quick roll call and got to his name. Piojos? She said, "That's an interesting and beautiful name. What does it mean?" He said, "Lice." There was dead silence and confused looks all around. This kid had been going to this school since kindergarten, small town, and had always gone by Piojos, which was his nickname. Nobody had a freaking clue what it meant, let alone that it wasn't his real name. All of his paperwork at the school had to be updated and everything. I thought it was hilarious. Thanks for watching till the end, and don't forget to subscribe and like for more of these ridiculous stories. Love you all, and stay safe out there in that crazy world. Much love. Peace.